having a nervous breakdown.
Yeah. You hear me, Jim Morrison?
Live on the edge, baby.
We're rolling, Jim.
Pretty neat.
Jump!
Now, I want you to come back in here this minute, Jim Morrison. I am not gonna kill myself for you.
God damn it, Jim. Your whole life is bullshit.
Shut up!
If you love me, come on out and get me.
No!
Pam, where you? Pam, get back inside. Pam, go.
Who are you?
Down here, honey.
Whoa!
Come on, baby.
Jim, give her your hand, man. She's gonna
All
fall.
right, Jim. Once more with feeling. Take two.
I don't wanna
Come
die.
on, baby.
You gotta write your leg
Come
over,
on.
man. We gotta finish it.
All the
Have an
forest
ending, Ray.
has wolves in it. The most
Come on, girl.
beautiful,
Happy man,
I see
you're
your
both gonna die.
hair is burning.
the most beautiful one of all, dances in a ring of fire and throws off the challenge with a shrug.
Them up by their own bootstraps.
Yes. It's yeah.
And at some level, if you're an executive in that kind of corporation, I'll bet you have to think that way.
Oh,
Otherwise, you're going to drive yourself insane.
or you get
Right?
kicked out of the club. Right?
Well, yeah, there's that too.
If I came into the meeting and said, but what about the kids in the rags? Like, shouldn't we at least give them some good clothes to wear, or some good boots, or a helmet? You know, like whatever.
Yeah. The next sentence would come out of somebody else's mouth, and it would be something like, "We're looking for a new board member."
Yeah. Get rid of that Peter. Get rid of him. So you ready to go even deeper on the cultural level? Because I'm ready. Like, if you're ready.
Yeah.
So, and this sort of plays into some of my history. And I don't mind being open about myself, as you all know from the last episode. But like, so I'll tell you just a little piece of my history. I grew up in a broken family. My mother was a religious fanatic.
Tells us he was on his way
My
to
dad and
a
her split up when I was about
delivery
11.
at around 2 a.m.
And
when this
I've never had a
15 to
normal,
20
real
foot sinkhole
mother-son
opened up
connection.
and
Anyway,
the
so
rear of the
I
truck
feel
fell in.
on many levels that religion is a disease in the world. And it's not just because I've been hurt in this way, but like, I have also been pondering this for years in my own self-study about psychology and my mental health struggles and attachment issues and how to learn to live in a human body. But like, I wanted to say, like, and this is the statement that might really bother people, but I think any religious or belief framework that suggests that there is a savior, the concept of a savior or a messiah, is a big piece of what has landed us in this environmental predicament. Because if you have it in your head, even in the background, like everything's going to be okay because this savior dude, he's going to come and he's going to rescue us. He's going to come from the sky or whatever. He's going to rescue us. He's going to make up for all of our bad decisions. So he can take responsibility for our bad decisions with ourselves, with each other, with the world. And so we can be as negligent and ignorant and irresponsible as we want, and then apologize and follow the church system, and then just assume that it's all going to be okay. And where I'm at this stage today, I think that's the biggest lie that humans have told to each other. And they have given themselves permission to not take responsibility because they think someone is coming to save them. And I want to say, no one is coming to save you. I know that'll bother lots of people, but what do you think of that, Guy?
As a scientist, I have to be agnostic. That's part of the deal. In my personal life, I'm a rabid atheist, or more correctly, I'm an anti-theist. I think that theism, that religion, that particularly the Abrahamic religions that have destroyed the planet and the people over the course of the last 6,000 years or so. The worst thing that has happened in the history of the planet.
Mm-hmm. And do you attribute it to that sort of that mechanism where people are like, it's all going to be fixed?
Of course.
The god or the gods are going to fix it so that we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to think about it, what we are doing, right? You know?
And it's manifest in different ways that are not necessarily religious. I mean, the President of the United States always has to say certain things to appeal to people, indicating that he is a religious icon. So far, it's all he. There's been no she's that have been president. And so they have to mouth these lines about being religious, about being part of the Abrahamic tradition. It's horrible. Are you kidding? It's awful. I think it was Stephen Weinberg who wrote a collection of essays long ago. I can't remember the title of it, but it's called Looking Up. And in there he has a line that there'll always be bad people, but for good people to do horrible things requires religion. And he meant, of course, something like the Abrahamic religions. I think that religion can come in a variety of forms, not necessarily associated with a god or a deity of any kind. People become religious in their behavior about all kinds of things. And I try to be very careful about not falling into that trap myself. I was, after about 25 years of not being in contact with one of my former graduate advisees, I spoke with her on the phone a few days ago, and I was stunned by the words coming out of her mouth. She kept saying things like, all we have is today.
Wind speeds reached 145
and we must live for today because
km/h,
tomorrow is
along
not
with heavy
insured.
rains paralyzed
And
the
living in the
Netherlands,
here and now.
also
And I'm like,
claiming 2
wait a
lives.
minute. Those are the kinds of things I've been saying, but I didn't think I was saying them 25 years ago. But she got them someplace.
A pedestrian was killed in the border
It
town
was
of
so
Riga. After tearing through
so
Germany,
good to
Storm
hear
Polly
that
tore down trees,
coming from somebody
upended vehicles
who
in
is
the Amsterdam
considerably
region of
younger
the
than I am.
Netherlands.
In fact, she was complaining about how she misses her 40s because she just turned 50 a month ago. I'm like, 40s? I don't miss them. I don't remember them.
Greenhouse gas emissions continue at the current rate. The Atlantic Ocean current system. As Europe braces for the impacts of climate change, one might envision its future to be scorching. However, this recent study from researchers at Niels Bohr Institute at the Department of Mathematical Sciences at the University of Copenhagen paints a different picture. The experts forecast that the thermohaline circulation, or the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, affectionately known as AMOC, the ocean current system that regulates the distribution of heat and cold between the North Atlantic region and the tropics, will cease to function entirely if rate of greenhouse gas emissions remain unchanged, shutting down the AMOC. By leveraging sophisticated statistical tools and analyzing ocean temperature data spanning the last century and a half, the researchers determined that, with a 95% certainty, the AMOC will collapse sometime between 2025 and 2095. The most likely time frame for this dramatic event is 34 years from now, in 2057, an event that will pose substantial challenges, from amplified warming in the tropics to surge in storminess in the North Atlantic region. quote, shutting down the AMOC can have very serious consequences for Earth's climate. For example, by changing how heat and precipitation are distributed globally, said Professor Peter Dibbitson from the Niels Bohr Institute. While cooling of Europe may seem a little less severe as the globe as a whole becomes warmer and heat waves occur more frequently, this shutdown will contribute to an increased warming of the tropics, where rising temperatures have already given to challenging living conditions. Our result underscores the importance of reducing global greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible.
Jason Box here. I want to make this short video to describe the record-setting temperatures that Greenland is getting July 2023. And this is at a time when global average temperatures are off the charts, caused by the El Nino ejecting that excess heat that the oceans have been taking up. Remember that 95% of the planetary energy imbalance from too much greenhouse gases, it's accumulating in the oceans. The oceans are really the big story about climate because, again, most of the energy is being absorbed by the oceans. Now in the El Nino, it comes out, and we're seeing that here with these shocking new records just smashed globally. And the other part of the story is that we're at an all-time high for greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere. So this global warming thing is very clear in this graphic. And we're seeing the consequences of this with extreme climate events that are just kind of daily now. But to focus on Greenland, we need to consider the North Atlantic. There have been record high temperatures. The typical pattern for sea surface temperatures has been a cold anomaly south of Greenland. This has been persistent, and here in the 100-year temperature trend, the only place on the planet that has been cooling is south of Greenland. This cold blob has to do with changing ocean circulations and probably the excess fresh water from melting Greenland and Arctic Canada flooding the North Atlantic, contributing to this disruption. But here we are today with the marine heat wave south of Greenland. That combined with the flow from the extremely warm North America, it's dragging that heat up to Greenland. It's picking up some heat from the oceans, and that's part of Greenland's melt story this year. To see melting wet snow conditions across the whole southern ice sheet is remarkable. There's even some wet snow being picked up by this satellite measurement here in what we call the dry snow area. These are the count of the melt days, and notice how there's only a narrow area of the dry snow area that has not yet had melting this year. And the southern ice sheet here, which really has high elevations, I'll talk about more, to have melting across the southern ice sheet is remarkable. Just a few weeks ago, we also had record melting conditions across North Greenland, but the story so far this year has really shifted to the south, the southern ice sheet melting. For the whole of Greenland, you can see 2023 here in the red line, and that is rivaling the 2012 extreme melting. On this date, we're ranked second for melting after 2012. And notice how the melt area has been around 1 million square kilometers for perhaps more time than in 2012. So again, we're rivaling the melting conditions at the surface in 2023, rivaling 2012. So we can bring in some of our automatic weather station data here. This place called Dai-2, that's 6,960 feet above sea level, so high on the southwestern ice sheet. I installed the original station in 1996, and we managed to keep this equipment running for that many years. 2023, round-the-clock melting several days in July. To have melting at nighttime, the sun does dip near the horizon here on the Arctic Circle, and to have melting at kind of midnight is remarkable. South Dome, higher in elevation, this is 9,490 feet. We had round-the-clock melting around the 8th of July this year. Max temperatures 6.5 Celsius. That's extreme. And so we'll have a closer look at July 8th of this year when that was the warmest day. This South Dome location is very memorable because I installed this station in 1997, and we've managed to keep these measurements running. And there have been problems though, and you can see here, 20 years later, the station's just getting hammered. It's a extreme climate up there, 9,000 feet above sea level, high winds, and a lot of snow. So the challenge is to keep the equipment from being buried. We have to extend these stations every year or two. We found the equipment June 2021, mostly buried. This was after the COVID problems that did cripple some of these stations. As you can see, they get buried. But we established this new generation of equipment, and South Dome I'm just dwelling on here because that's really where the July 2023 melt anomaly is focused. So these are so-called melting degree days. It's the sum of air temperatures above 0 Celsius, and we have 2023 at record high melting degree days, higher than 2012. And you can see we've got some data gaps here. We know that 2010 was also a very warm year, so that may be up here. But as you can see, 2023 is extremely high temperature for South Dome. So Xavier Fettweis is calculating the so-called surface mass balance. That's the balance of snowfall and meltwater runoff. And for this small, or this area of South Greenland, it's not that small, this green area, the surface mass balance is record low. So the ice sheet has been in mass budget deficit throughout the year when you add these up day by day. And so again, the story for 2023 seems to be so far focused in South Greenland. And so I look here at the integrated water vapor transport. This is precipitable water. It's the amount of water vapor in the atmosphere. And around the 8th of July 2023, it's pretty interesting. So here in the water vapor transport, you'll notice the atmospheric river coming on the 6th of July this year and hitting central West Greenland. We're going to look at precipitation measurements from our weather station network, and notice how South Dome is dry, and that stays like this. So across South Greenland, it's dry during this period around the 8th of July. When again this atmospheric river hits central West Greenland and it's delivering rainfall. Here at Dai-2 station, again pretty high on the ice sheet, there's 30 millimeters of rainfall in July of this year. At Saddle, even higher, this is like 8,400 feet above sea level, we have more than 10 millimeters of rain. The rain is really coming on the 6th, 7th of July at Dai-2. And Swiss Camp, further north, the rain's coming on the 7th, 8th, 30 millimeters. And that's continued this month. These hourly data are updated to present. There's only a 10-minute latency on these data, so these data are very fresh up through the recording of this video on the 22nd of July. Jar and Swiss Camp. So Jar is 15 kilometers lower on the ice sheet than Swiss Camp, and you'll see similar spike in rainfall, up to 40 millimeters of rain. Looks like about 25 millimeters of rain, an inch of rain in a day at this location at 69.5 north in the Arctic on the Western Greenland ice sheet. So I mentioned earlier that South Dome was dry, and you can see the rain accumulation is very low. It basically hasn't rained at South Dome except for 1 millimeter this month. So the heat wave, These are the ERA 5 data about a few thousand feet above the surface. And you can see from the start of this on the 2nd of July, there's a prevailing south airflow. And this just continues for a lot of July. I was waiting to make this video until the melt ended, but it's just kept going. And 2023 started out low melt, and it wasn't looking like much until July when it really picked up. So here we are on the 8th of July, and this is the pattern that has been south airflow heating, especially South Greenland. Any of the red colors are above melting temperatures. It's again remarkable to see such high temperatures for the southern ice sheet. Here at one of the PromIce stations, we have enough data where I computed the average daily temperature, and here's 2023. So at this location, 1,800 meters above sea level, we have 2023 daily average temperatures above 1 standard deviation, above the 66th percentile.
Away, Troy. My opinion is that humans are a part of nature. We are not separate from it. He's going to become, Sancho Panza's going to become one with a chipmunk. You get that, Chippy, like that. After I came across your book, I began asking myself, are humans really a cancer on the planet? I thought, aren't we part of this whole ecosystem? I initially set out to disprove what you are saying, but the argument you make is so extremely convincing. I know from your writing that when you were first conceptualizing the notion that humans are a cancer on the planet, it was very unpopular. But now it seems like this idea has earned some mainstream acceptance. Is that true? This is Dr. Hearn. This is a fundamental scientific and philosophical question. And first of all, I agree with you that we are part of nature. We evolved in a natural ecosystem, and we have obviously very intimate, close ties with other species, other animals. Humans are unique in that they have culture, although we're learning that other animals have certain levels of culture also, like whales. So we are really not unique in that sense, but we have a different and higher level of culture that allows us to dominate other species and ecosystems. These are cultural adaptations that allow us to survive, but they have become malignant maladaptations because they are now threatening our survival and millions of other species. We have essentially made a decision at this point as a species to go extinct. That's what we're doing. We are eliminating our biosphere and our planetary support system, consciously or not. And I think mostly unconsciously, although with each passing day, it's getting harder to believe that we are doing this unconsciously. When I first came on to this in the late 1960s, I was horrified. It's not an analogy. Nobody ever died from an analogy. It is a diagnosis, and that is different.
I think that's how we justify our harmfulness. Justify our harmfulness to the planet and to each other. And it is strange how we can tell these stories and then believe it, and then other people believe it. All you gotta, I think, and you know, if you want a really great empire, you better have a good narrative.
Right.
You better have a good narrative, a good story. So, are you thinking that greed is like in the realms of illness, or do you think it's just normal human behavior?
I think it's both.
Okay.
I mean, it's not normal, but it's typical human behavior. Almost everybody I know wants more, wants to, and almost nobody is willing to recognize the consequences of what it means to become wealthy.
But
you gotta stomp on people and on the planet to get there.
I don't think that you would do it. I don't think I would do it. Like, if you had a car company and you knew the consequences of whatever, extracting the materials, if you knew all of the ramifications of building those cars, would you still do it? Like, well, I don't think I would do it.
Of course not. Of course not. There are a few people in the world, and I know a few of these people, that have given their lives to service in whatever form it takes. The woman who founded Poetry Inside Out and who asked me to come in as a guest for one day, and I stayed for 4 years. She was clearly committed to a life of service, and she used to tell her husband that God will provide. And his response was always, can he start providing every Friday? He meant she should be making money, right? Because that's what we do.
Like the people that build smartphones, they must know that those kids have to go down in those mines, right?
Of course they don't. How could they not? If I know, and we're not in the cell phone industry, we're not in the mining industry, we're not involved in environmental organizations that are trying to stop that from happening, yet it's common knowledge that the quest for coltan, this complex ore, is what's killing a lot of people, women and children all over the world all the time, but always out of our sight. You don't ever see this on the corporate television, do you?
And what do they pay those kids? Pennies per hour?
Yeah, if anything.
And it looks like they're just in rags. I mean, the pictures that I've seen, maybe it's all just fabrication, what I've seen, but it's got to be somewhat close to the truth,
Of course. How could Apple make $1 billion every 15 minutes if not for the ability to exploit people?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it takes to make real money.
Yeah.
Is exploitation.
I think that's been a big block for me because I've always wanted to help, but I've never been able to generate a big income from wanting to help.
That's because there isn't any ability to do that.
I have to.
You think Steve Jobs and Warren Buffett and Bill Gates are all about service?
I gotta think like a freaking sociopath, or I can't make money, or very much.
But you can't. You're not cognitively capable. You don't have the character to think in that manner. You can't, or you wouldn't be doing what you're doing today.
I need to go to sociopath school.
Yes. I think they call that an MBA.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're just thinking in hardcore dollars and cents, right, and like what is going to increase the bottom line, what is going to, and just sort of block out any humanistic feeling related stuff, just got to block it out, right? Then you can maybe make your way that way. But yeah, like I could never run a car business. I could never do anything where I know people are being hurt across the world and I'm profiting off of their pain. I can't do it. Like I just can't do it. And it's just, I think it's strange. I think that, yeah, like we are able to somehow justify it and even call ourselves the good guys while we're doing it. Because I'm pretty sure the executives at Apple think, oh, we're providing a service to the world. We're the good guys.
Of course.
And not only to the people in the westernized world, but also the poor people, because we're giving them jobs, even if they don't pay much.
We're giving them jobs. We're giving them the ability to communicate across the world in ways they never had before. Those poor people. We're bringing them up by their own bootstraps.
Yes. It's yeah.
And at some level, if you're an executive in that kind of corporation, I'll bet you have to think that way.
Oh,
Otherwise, you're going to drive yourself insane.